Unless you wait. I'll let you. Okay. Do you want to? You're good. Yeah. Okay, if everybody could find a seat. All right, let's get started. We've want to introduce Tom Shapiro with StrataBeat. They're an agency out of Boston, and then, of course, like everybody else, all over the United States. He's going to be talking about how he increased blog traffic for his client 1 million times. And so, everybody, please give a big hand for Tom Shapiro.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks, everyone, for attending. I hope that you're having a fantastic state of search. So, yes, we're going to look at how you can increase your organic traffic massively, right? There are a lot of case studies that talk about doubling traffic or tripling traffic, maybe even 10xing traffic. What we're going to talk about today is how do you 70x your traffic. And so there's certain things that are going to be very intuitive and make sense. And I think that there are going to be several steps in the process that might surprise you as well. So what did we do? So we were able to get 1,508 non-branded keywords onto Google page 1 as part of this process. We were able to take the client's domain authority, their domain rating, from a 35, which is pretty low, and raise it up to a 73, which is pretty substantial. And as the title suggested, a massive increase in organic traffic of 7,236%. Now, this didn't happen overnight, so there were increases in year 1 and year 2, but in year 3 is when we were able to go over 7,000%. So this is a 3-year case study. As you all know, SEO takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. We're going to walk through every step of the process with you. And one thing that you'll see is that there were a lot of challenges. This was a client that was set up to totally fail and fail miserably. And so not only were we able to achieve 7,000% increase in organic traffic, but we were able to do it facing a lot of headwinds, right? A lot of challenges which would make any website difficult to optimize. So a little bit about myself. So I'm the founder and CEO of a marketing agency called StrataBeat. So we focus on B2B organic growth. So we do SEO, we do content development, content marketing, ABM, we build websites. And I'll just throw it out there. We are looking for an SEO and content specialist at this time. So if anyone in the audience is looking for a new position or a new gig, talk to me afterwards. And so through the years, I started my SEO career in 2005. So, what is it, about 17 years of doing SEO. And along the way, I've worked with a lot of startups, a lot of mid-market companies, as well as a lot of Fortune 500 companies, including Intel, AT&T, GE, and others. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff. And I hope this is going to be fun for you to walk through this. I hope that you find it very actionable. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on theory here. We're going to focus on what is going to move the needle for you and your business, or if you work at an agency, what's going to move the needle for your clients. So it's going to be very, very, I hope, tangible, actionable, and let's get to it. All right, so the client hired us, and the first thing that we noticed was they had a lot of okay content, right? So the content was just okay. There's nothing special about it, nothing unique. And beyond that, it was interesting because we had the challenge where the website was misaligned with the audience. So this was a company that historically had focused on startups. That was their target audience. They wanted to shift and focus on the Fortune 500 and the Fortune 1000. Well, that's a completely different audience segment, right? And so you have to market to them very differently. Like you wouldn't market a Lamborghini the way that you market a Honda Civic, right? They're just very, very different You have to accommodate your marketing in order to really hit the audience very hard and very effectively. Their website was not doing that. And they were looking for us to drive a ton of traffic to it, right? So obviously, what's one of the problems with that? If you drive a ton of traffic to a website that's misaligned in messaging with the audience, you're going to drive a lot of frustration, you're going to drive a lot of bad leads, and it's just going to be horrible for everyone. On top of this, we were facing a website that was confusing. If you read the language on the homepage, it was really difficult even pinpointing exactly what this company did. So, yeah, and you might say, how is that possible? Well, they were trying to be clever, right? They were trying to be smarter than everyone in the room. Just sometimes that doesn't work. If you're not communicating clearly, right? If the audience arrives and they don't know exactly what you do and exactly how to engage with you and whether it's the right website for them, it's going to lead to a lot of abandonment, which is what they were seeing. Other challenges. So, as I mentioned, they were producing content. They had a blog. They were blogging, but the schedule is completely random, right? There was just no rhyme or reason to when or why they were blogging. There's lack of differentiation. As I said, it was a lot of okay content. And if you asked what was different about their content versus any of their competitors, I couldn't answer. I have no idea. There was just no differentiation. So, there's a lack of a point to having a blog. There's a lack of social proof. So they did have 3 small case studies on their website when they hired us. And they were all misaligned. They were not anything that would substantiate marketing to a Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 company. If anything, it would deter them. They would read it and say, that's not us, and leave. And so that's also what we inherited. And on top of all of these challenges, this was one of the very most competitive spaces in Google. I would argue that it's one of the top 5 in all of Google in terms of difficulty to get onto Google page 1. So we were faced with all of these challenges, right? So what would you do if you were us, right? And you were faced with this new client and you had all of these challenges? What's the first thing that you would do? You might think, oh, well, keyword research, right? Or you might think, I'm going to look at topics of interest. You might be thinking, some kind of SEO tactic or SEO secret, right? No, none of those. So let's look at the strategic areas of focus. And the first thing that we had to do was not SEO, which is kind of crazy, right? It's counterintuitive. In order to get 7,000% growth in SEO, the first thing we had to do was not do SEO. Because again, if we're going to be doing SEO and we're driving the wrong traffic to the wrong website with the wrong message, with the wrong case studies, everyone loses. The people who come to the site are frustrated. It's a bad experience, right? And so you're doing more damage to the brand than good. And even if someone does convert, it's a bad lead. So we had to fix their branding first. And so if you're faced with a company that has mediocre branding or a mediocre brand strategy, fix that first. Why? Because a rising tide lifts all boats, right? If you want easier and easier SEO wins, you got to fix the brand. So think about Coca-Cola, right? One of the reasons why Coca-Cola is so successful is because their brand foundation is so strong, right? Everyone knows Coke. Everyone knows that it's all about happiness. It's all about refreshment. The brand is really strong. And so no matter what marketing Coca-Cola does, it's going to be effective because they have that foundation in place. They can do anything. They can do anything as long as it's on brand, right? And it's going to be effective. And so it's similar with SEO. As I mentioned, rising tide lifts all boats, right? You have to focus on having a really strong brand. If you want to double your organic traffic, you don't have to do this. But if you want 7,000% growth and you want your client or your own business hiring literally hundreds and hundreds of new employees to accommodate the growth that you bring, you have to fix the brand first. So it's a little counterintuitive, but we spent 5 months focusing on the brand and fixing the brand before doing any optimization. And so just consider that. If you're focused on SEO, and let's say you work at a company and you're responsible for SEO, you need to speak up. You need to play a bigger role. You need to play a central role in your marketing, period, right? You can't just be in your silo. You can't stay in your lane. Get out of your lane. You have to put your CMO hat on. This is so important. Put your CMO hat on and talk to the powers that be about changing the brand. It's that important. Let's say you don't follow this advice. Let's say you're like, nah, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm just gonna do my job and I'm gonna optimize. I'm just gonna optimize. Well, here's the problem with that. You're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up for career failure. Why? Because it's almost impossible to be super successful when your brand is weak, right? You could be amazing at optimization, but it's gonna be very, very difficult. It's like a weight is tied to your leg and you're trying to run, right? It just doesn't work. What happens when you have mediocrity, right? Your website is mediocre and you're trying to optimize it. You've optimized mediocrity. How is that a formula for success? How is that a formula for 7,000% growth, right? So you can see my point. It just doesn't jive, right? You can't do it. So what I want you to do is, instead of thinking about, oh, we need to optimize the site, oh, we need to increase organic traffic, is think about it more. How are we going to work within a framework of teeing the business up for success? So not SEO, the business. Everything that you're going to focus on is for business success rather than SEO success. So again, a little counterintuitive, but that's what ultimately will drive the SEO results. That will enable the SEO results. So areas of focus, we've talked about branding, right? And building a really strong brand. Next, we spend a lot of time on search intent. We spend a ton of time on search intent, in fact, before we do anything. Because what we want to do is understand that person who is searching for that particular keyword. Let's say they're searching for business loan. I better understand exactly what they're looking for and what they're expecting to find in Google, and I better understand what Google is serving up. Otherwise, it's all random. So business loan, I go into Google and I type in business loan. I'm searching on business loan, and what do I find? And the results are filled with small business loan information. So if you want to get on Google page 1, very, very simple, right? You have to write about small business loans specifically. For this particular keyword, that's the way to get onto Google page 1. You can't write about anything else. You can, and it might be amazing, and it might be beautiful. It might be very articulate. It might be accurate, but that's not what Google is looking for, because Google has determined that the search intent is actually small businesses that are looking for business loans. So you have to align. Everything needs to align. So you have to do this with keyword after keyword after keyword. If you look at Best Business Loans 2022, it's going to be completely different. The intent is completely different. So you have to write very differently. In this case, we're talking about a list, and it needs to include competitors. It needs to include different brands, and it's a comparison. And so companies like NerdWallet or LendingTree do very well on these types of terms. And so you might decide as a brand, yeah, we would love to rank on this, but you know what? It's not our space. We don't have a right to win. Or we don't want to talk about competitors. Or we have a software client that does this, right? And so we'll talk about competitors on the page because that's their strategy. They want to be found no matter what. They'd much rather that they list the competitors and they frame the conversation, and that the searcher goes to their site and sees the comparison as they're framing it, rather than going to LendingTree or going to NerdWallet or something like that, a third party where it's completely out of their control. So, it's going to depend on your strategy, but you need to understand search intent. Let's say that it's business loans for veterans. Well, guess what? It's pretty straightforward. The content has to speak specifically to veterans. That is what is on Google page 1. And you can also look at Google page 2 for validation as well, depending on the topics, depending on the keywords, depending on the client, depending on the competitive landscape. It might make sense, if you have an extensive list of competitors, to also look at Google page 2. You can also look, so here's another keyword. What is an SBA loan? So in this case, this must be educational in nature. It must be informative in nature. And so you can't really be trying to sell your business loan services, right? You need to be very educational and answer the question, what is this type of loan? And so every keyword is going to be different. And if you go across the ecosystem of keywords that you want to cover, every single one, you need to run this type of search intent analysis. And so this is just 13 keywords related to business loans, but they're all very different. And it represents 207,000 searches a month in Google in the US. You can extrapolate this across hundreds of keywords and imagine the massive market opportunity that this represents. This is how you can massively impact your business, your company, right? But you have to go one by one by one. You know, you look at something like a business loan and you say, well, should I start there? Because that's kind of the keystone of this topic area. No. What I think you should do is go for low-hanging fruit first. It's really important. Go for low-hanging fruit and collect some quick wins. Collect wins brick by brick by brick, and then it gets easier and easier and easier to accelerate your organic growth. I mentioned that it takes time, right, to get 7,000% growth. It doesn't happen overnight. In our case, it took 3 years, right? But the way you do it is you start off picking off the easy stuff, right? And so one thing might be look at where you're ranking today on Google page 2 and Google page 3 and start there. Or because obviously, right, it is easier to go from Google page 2 or 3 to page 1 than to start from scratch, or to go after a keyword with a ranking difficulty that is in the 70s or the 80s. So ranking difficulty is something that you can see in a tool like Ahrefs or SEMrush. And so in this case, we're looking at Ahrefs, and there are certain keywords here which are easier than others. For example, a business loan for 100K is relatively easy to rank for. So we'll do our search intent on that, and we'll try and rank for that first before we ever even consider going after business loan itself, which is going to be hyper competitive, super difficult to rank for. We need to increase our website authority before we go after those types of very, very difficult terms. And here's something that not every SEO is going to tell you, but you have to add something special, something extra, that special sauce, something that makes you different from all the other listings on Google page 1 and page 2. So yes, we're looking at what Google is interested in. So for instance, with business loan, we saw that Google is actually looking for small business loan when you type that into Google, right? But it doesn't mean that you just want to copy what everyone else is doing. We're not saying that at all. What we're saying is you need to differentiate yourself within that framework, right? Google is giving you the guardrails. Fine, we'll stay within those guardrails, but we're still going to be very unique and very different. So for our client, we're constantly brainstorming new ideas, new ways to bring value to the audience, new ways to thrill them. And we'll talk about this later, but new ways to get them so excited that they're going to want to tell others. And so this is a necessary ingredient. If all you're doing is you're writing content and you're publishing content, it's not enough. You really need to bring something that others are not bringing and have the best result on Google page 1. That's what you're targeting. That's what you're trying to do. All right, so we looked at what is appearing on Google page 1, maybe Google page 2 in our SERP analysis. Now what we want to do is data analysis. So let's look at the SERP. There is a ton of data here. There are hundreds and hundreds of data points here. And what do I mean by that? So I mean there are title tags, and there are meta descriptions, and there are commonly used keywords. There might be different elements that are included in the SERP. Videos, for example. Some searches have videos, some don't. What we want to do is we want to look at the Google SERP itself, and then we want to do data analysis for every single listing. So in other words, we want to click through every single listing that's on Google page 1 and analyze what is the content. Is it a blog post? How long is it? Things like that. We want to see what is constructing what's appearing here. Well, obviously that would take forever, right? That would take forever to manually click through, analyze every single result for every single keyword that you want to go after. And so there's a better way. So we use a tool called Through, T-H-R-U-U-U. And what Through does is it will download all of the data points from the Google SERP, all of them, hundreds and hundreds of data points in a few seconds, in like 2 or 3 seconds. And it will give you everything that you need to do your data analysis very, very easily. You don't need to be a data scientist. You don't need to be someone who has studied statistics or anything like that. It's very, very easy to use. I will reveal that we do have a relationship with Through. We do marketing for Through. But I also want to tell you that before that, we were using through ourselves. So we were using through before we ever had a relationship with them. And it's because we loved it so much and we were using it all the time that we approached them and said, hey, you know what? We love your tool. We would love to do some marketing for you. So just wanted to get that disclosure out of the way. With that said, even if we didn't have a relationship, would we recommend through as your strategic step to do this type of analysis? Absolutely. Because again, it's a fantastic way to download hundreds of data points in a few seconds to give you everything that you need to analyze the SERP and understand what Google is really looking for under the hood. So what do I mean by that? Well, the first step is kind of taking that bird's eye view and what is constructing the SERP. So we want to look at things like how many words are on the page on average on Google page 1. And you can extend this beyond Google page 1, but let's just say Google page 1. What's the average word count for what's on Google page 1? In the SERP itself, so in Google, is there a video box or is there knowledge box? Things like that, just looking at it from a bird's eye view, what is making up the SERP? And then we want to go and we want to look at each individual piece of content that is ranking on Google page 1. So for example, what are all the H1s that are making up the Google SERP, right? And then we can look at section 1 as well. And that could be H2s, it could be H3s. It depends on how that company constructed their page. Some don't start with H2s. But how are they kicking off their content? How are they introducing their content is another angle of analysis that you can do. Headings. So what are the most commonly used headings? So this is not top of the page or an H2 necessarily. This is any heading that appears in any of the content that is listed on Google page 1. And so you can see all the different headings that are on Google page 1 if you were to click through on each of those pieces of content. And you can see what are the commonalities, right? You can see what is appearing most. You can see, where are the similarities. And then that also helps you, one, figure out what you have to cover. Because if everyone is covering a specific topic, you probably need to cover it as well. Google is probably requiring that. But then you can also see how to differentiate yourself from the others. You can do the same with title tags. And not only what the title tags are, but you can also analyze the words that are making up each title tag. So it will reveal to you the most commonly used words that are in the title tag itself. And then common keywords. So this is not keyword research. So keyword research is, I want to target business loan, right, as a keyword, or business loans for small business. And so then, if you were just doing keyword research, you would look for things like domestic keyword search volume or global search volume. If you're a global company, you would look at ranking difficulty, things like that. What we're talking about with common keywords here is it's reverse engineering Google, right? So what are those keywords that are commonly found in the content that's ranking on Google page 1? And if Google is showing you, hey, we're going to rank content that includes this keyword or that keyword, guess what? You probably need to include it in your content as well. A good example here is, even though we're searching on business loan, credit scores appears 24 times. So on Google page 1, if you click through on every single listing, you would see credit scores 24 times. That's a lot. And so you probably need to cover credit scores. Again, we're not looking to copy content, but we do need to know that the framework that Google is working with it. We want to know what Google wants to see, but then we should write about it in a differentiated way from the others. People also ask, so the questions that you see on Google page 1, so PAAs, oftentimes the PAA might include 3 questions, might include 4 questions, right? That's pretty typical. What if you could see the top 25 questions? What if you could see the top 50 questions? What if you could see the top 100 questions that Google is listing in its database? And that's what through enables you to do. So it's very interesting because oftentimes the top 3 or the top 4, yes, they're important, but they're usually very, very basic. Sometimes they're too basic for you to really use in your content. And so by going deeper and looking at the top 25 or the top 50 questions that people are asking online as perceived by Google, it enables you to then figure out which ones you want to answer and make sure that your content is answering the questions that Google wants you to answer. All right. So any questions about SERP analysis? We're good? Okay. So next, let's talk about content structure. So what we did for this client was we would produce very, very long form content. So minimum 2,000 words per blog post. And oftentimes it would be 5,000 words or 7,000 words. We even have some that are 9,000 words. And one blog post is practically a novel, right? But for certain keywords, right, when we see what the average word count is on Google page 1, sometimes we need 5,000 words in order to get onto Google page 1. Or, Google page 1 is filled with content that has 3,500 words. And so to be more competitive, we want to know what that average word count is and then beat it. Now, there are SEOs out there, and you'll see them screaming on LinkedIn, word count doesn't matter, and, the length of your text doesn't matter. And I get it. I totally get it. And I know where they're coming from. But here's the thing. You will always, always, always find exceptions. Always. So you might find that 9 out of 10 on Google page 1 have 3,500 words on average. And maybe one, which is an outlier, has 500 words. I get it. So, someone might say, see? And I've seen this on LinkedIn a lot. See? This one has 500. It doesn't matter at all. Oh, come on. We have to be more intelligent than that, right? We need to see what's happening on 80% of Google page 1. We need to see what's happening on 90% of Google page 1. And if Google is clearly telling you through your reverse engineering that you should have 3,500 words in order to answer this query, and yeah, we can ignore the one with 500 words, then we should follow that. We need to look at the 80-20 rule here and just be smart with the way we're optimizing and not get misguided by one exception that's in the SERP. Because yes, you will find exceptions. Absolutely, you're going to find exceptions. I'll tell you that very honestly, you will. But if you want 7,000% growth with your organic traffic, you need to look at the bigger picture. And we find that word count, it really does matter. And do your analysis, use through, and it will spit out the average word count for you in seconds, right? So you don't have to manually take time to do this. But there's a difference between needing 2,000 words on the page in order to rank on Google page 1 and needing 9,000. So you better know before you start, because that's going to impact everything, right? It's going to impact your content brief. It's going to impact your content strategy for that piece. It's going to impact even the CTAs. How many CTAs can you fit on a 9,000 word piece? A ton, right? So it impacts everything. Another thing that we did was we organized all of the keywords into SEO topic clusters. So this is a hub and spoke model of organizing content where you have a head term. So you have a main generic term, let's say business loans, right? And that's your main hub. And then you're going to build a content ecosystem around that to signal to Google that you are authoritative on this ecosystem of content around business loans. So we're not only going to tell Google that we care about business loans and we're experts at business loans and we should rank on Google page 1 for business loans, but also all of the related terms as well. So that might be, an SBA loan, business loans for veterans, business loans for small business loans for Texas, right? There are many, many different ways that you can look at this. But what you want to do is cluster that content. And here's the thing, don't try in the beginning to go after 10 different clusters. Do not. What you want to do is start with 1, start with 2, start with 3. Keep it manageable. And again, get quick wins. Get wins, because the more that Google sees that you're winning, then it's going to reward you. Again, it goes back to a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so it's not true across every topic. If you are focused on business loans, then it doesn't mean that you can write about anything, but you can start writing about things that are adjacent to that topic, right? And so you can slowly expand and expand and expand. Think of a tree, right? And tree rings. So think of starting with the middle tree ring, and then you grow out into further rings that expand your expertise. Another thing that, this is specific to B2B. So if anyone is in B2B SEO here, a lot of times we see that SEOs are missing an opportunity by targeting vertical specific content. So with our client, they had 0 vertical specific content. We said, hey, this is a great opportunity to dominate in your different verticals, your target verticals, right? Your audience's verticals. And why is this such a great strategy? Because it's so much easier to win. It is so much easier to win when you're targeting verticals, and you can really dominate the page. And so we would recommend, as part of your SEO mix, as part of your SEO strategy. We're not saying that this is the most important thing, but it's a very effective way to gain incremental rankings more easily. So let's talk about SEO copywriting. We've talked about branding, right? We've talked about SERP analysis. We've talked about the data analysis under the hood of Google. We've talked about content structure. So now we're on the page itself. We're on the page. What are we going to do on the page? Well, there's a lot of things we have to do. This is SEO 101, right? We have to do everything from optimizing the H1s to the title tags, all the way down to Google Eat. So for anyone who's not aware, Google Eat stands for expertise and authoritativeness and trustworthiness. And so it's signaling to Google on the page somehow that this content was written by experts, right? And that it's trustworthy, that others are linking to it and citing it. And so ways that you can do that are by, for example, a simple way is simply listing the credentials of the author, and list a lot of credentials, list very impressive credentials. It's one very simple way of communicating Eat to Google. There are a variety of ways, but what you want to do is look at SEO copywriting holistically and do all of these different things. So how can you take your SEO copywriting to the next level and be more sophisticated in your SEO copywriting? Go beyond the SEO 101 tactics that we just looked at and go to 201 and 301. So we use a tool called ClearScope. There are other tools on the market as well, such as MarketMuse. Surfer is another one, where they use AI to analyze the Google SERP and show you exactly what keywords and related keywords you're going to need to have on the page in order for Google to consider your content comprehensive and very relevant, right? And so not only will it tell you related keywords that you should be including in your piece, it will tell you how many times you should probably include it. And that can be a range. It doesn't have to be a specific number. And you don't have to do this for every single keyword that they recommend. But the more that you're following these guidelines, the greater the chance that your content is going to rank on Google page one. We've been doing this for this client. It's been incredibly effective, as you can see from the result, right? And so this really works. Another thing which is helpful is the tools will tell you what you should include in your headlines as well. So you have headers down the page, your H2s and your H3s, your H4s. And so it will often indicate to you what you should probably include for a related keyword in your H2 or in your H3. Also very, very helpful. So we're not saying follow this to a T. We're not saying follow every single recommendation that a ClearScope or a MarketMuse is going to give you. We're not saying that. We're saying use this as guidelines, use this as a framework, use this as directional instructions on how to optimize the page, and then use your best judgment. Because here's the thing. Tools are fantastic, but you got to use your best judgment. We want you to be amazing marketers first, and then SEOs second, right? Your marketing has to be phenomenal in order to convert the most, right? And to generate the most leads and revenue. And so don't go overboard on this. Don't try and be 100% perfect with optimization. Don't force it, is what I'm saying. Don't force it. Don't put a square peg in a round hole. Make sure that your content makes sense. It's very fluid. It's beautiful content, right? And it's the best content out there. Don't just, stuff related keywords in there. Do not. Another thing that these tools do, which is very helpful, is they grade you. And so here's a big mistake that a lot of SEOs make. They use these tools and then they try and get an A++ on every single piece that they write. And I'm here to tell you, don't do that. Do not do that. Very bad idea. And I'll tell you why. So again, the tools are directional. The best thing that you can do is write amazing content and then optimize it, right? Make sure that it's optimized. Nothing should be forced and nothing should be stilted or awkward, right? We want it to be flowing and beautiful language. So let's look at SEO scoring of a content piece. So what these tools will do is they'll tell you, hey, your content that you're writing right now for this content piece, targeting, let's say, business loan as a keyword, is an A++. This will you have a good chance of making it onto Google page 1 with this, right? You've followed our instructions. Or it could be an A-, could be a B+, could be a C-, right? It could be a D. And a D obviously is, hey, you know, nice that you're writing this piece, but it's probably never going to make it onto Google page 1, right? But here's the secret, and this is what a lot of SEOs won't tell you. Just because you can potentially get an A+ doesn't mean you need to. For every single keyword, see what the average is and see what Google considers important. And if Google is listening here, 50% of the pages is C-, a C-. So why would you need an A++ to make it onto Google page 1? Google is saying, I don't care, right? I don't need an A++. What I need is amazing content. That's what Google's saying here, right? Or I need high authoritativeness. So what you want to do is keyword by keyword is look at this and understand, okay, well, you know, for certain keywords, yes, we are going to need an A- or we'll need an A++, but for other content like business loan, actually you don't. You could probably get away with something less, but you have to figure out some other way of making it onto Google page 1. So internal linking makes me want to cry. How many SEOs forget about internal linking? So internal linking is something that you should be doing with every single blog post that you write, every single one. And I would guess that maybe 80% of SEOs do not do that, right? So what you want to do is with every piece that you write, figure out where to link to other related posts with those keywords as the anchor text. So meaning, you know, the text that is linkable, right? And so that's one form, that's one direction of the internal links. Step 2, I want you to put away the new content piece that you have. I want you to go back and I want you to look at your library of content. Let's say you have hundreds of blog posts. Yes, review hundreds of blog posts. Look for every single one where you need to insert a link back to that new piece of content. So it's 2 steps. One, for the new piece of content, you're adding internal links, but then you're going back to your old content as well, and you're adding links where it makes sense. Don't force it. Do not force it. It needs to be natural, right? It needs to be something that makes sense to the reader. But I want you to do both of those things for every blog post that you write. Again, you can double your traffic, you can triple your traffic, but if you want 7,000% growth, this is what I'm telling you you need to do. There are no silver bullets. There's no easy, quick way to do this. It's a lot of hard work. It's time consuming, but you got to do it. Updating old content. And so what I also want you to do is go back to your old content. We did this with this client. And so we analyzed all of the content they had historically in the blog, and we eliminated most of it. And so what you want to do is look at which old blog posts that you have are still serving your needs. And if they are, perfect, leave them alone. If they're not, strengthen them, augment them, add value, right? Make them better. Make them better than anything that's on page 1 today, updated, right? The other option is you can merge, right? If you have 2 posts that are related, merge them. Or let's say that you have a page which is no longer relevant, or it's just not worth your time, delete it and 301 redirect it to something more relevant. User experience and passive link building. So this is something, again, a lot of SEOs don't focus on, is user experience and, you know, how can you use user experience in order to drive more growth? So with this client, we were able, without any outreach, keep in mind, we did not do any link building for them, okay, none. And we were able to get them 3,000, 5,000. Actually, these are links from 3,500 websites. So there were thousands and thousands of links, right? But what I want you to focus on is how many unique websites you're getting links from. That's more important. That's much more important. It's 10 times more important than looking at your backlinks. Look at your referring domains. How many websites, how many unique websites are linking to you? We were able to get 3,500 without, I won't say without trying, but without any outreach. So how did we do that? How do you do that? So there are different ways. One is you want to answer the very specific questions. And so the psychologist, Alfred Yarbus, ran some eye tracking studies where he had a group of people and he would pull one individual aside at a time, and he would ask that individual a question, and then he would show that individual a painting. And then they would track where the person was looking and how they were consuming the information in the painting. And so, for example, if Yarbus would ask the person in the study, how old do you think the people are in the painting? That's the middle panel. And they would look at their faces, and they would not look elsewhere. They would just look at their faces. But if he asked, what's their status in society? They would look at their clothing and would not look at their faces. So depending on the very specific questions that your target audience is thinking in their mind and asking as they hit your content, those are the questions you have to ask. And so my question is, have you defined those questions? Have you spent the time writing down, not just thinking like, oh yeah, we kind of, we know. No. Write them down. It's challenging, right? It's challenging to know the very specific questions, but there are lots of ways to do it. You can do it through, search data, through social data. You can conduct interviews. We love doing audience interviews, right? So that's another way of doing it. And then what you want to do is add a wow factor. And so what I mean by that is for this client, we added stories, we added screenshots, we added case studies, anything to get them more engaged, right? And so what's interesting about stories is it actually changes the brain's chemistry. It releases oxytocin in the brain, and that is the drug of empathy. And so it leads to a better brand experience. It's more likely that they are going to like your brand, or it can lead to brand love, right? So Groove Software, which is customer support software, ran a study where same exact blog post, but the first one had a story as the introduction. The next one did not. The one with the story, everything else was the same, 100% identical. So the one with the story actually wound up increasing engagement by 300% and increasing time on page by over 500%. Another thing that you can do is original research. So again, remember, what we're talking about here is how can you drive passive links without spending day after day after day manually doing outreach, right? So original research is fantastic for this. So it's been found by Mantis Research, BuzzSumo, that original research leads to 60% more backlinks. It also leads to more leads, more traffic, more media hits, more everything, right? So it's fantastic overall. But if you want passive backlinks, like we were able to get over 3,500 without any type of outreach, original research is a fantastic way to do it. Another thing that you can do, and we did this for this client, was include stats in your content. If you include stats, what happens? Others cite your blog posts, right? When they want to talk about a topic that's similar, right? Or when they want to talk about a topic related to that stat, right? What they'll do is they will link to you as the source of that data to back up their points. And so stats are very, very effective. Behavioral intelligence. So go way beyond SEO, right? We're talking about how to get people to love your content. How do you get them to link to it? How do you get them to share, right? Behavioral intelligence is critical. So what I mean by this is looking at heat mapping, looking at click mapping, looking at scroll mapping, looking at attention mapping, looking at video recordings of your actual users on your site. So these are not tests. These are your actual site visitors. Software that you can use is very readily available. Mouseflow is one that we use all the time. Also, Full Story is fantastic. If you work at an enterprise, multi-billion-dollar company, very large, bigger budgets, we would recommend Decibel. It's very expensive, but it's very robust. And so what you want to do is identify where the experience is awesome and where people are having a bad experience. And even if you're driving lots of traffic to a page, if the experience is bad, we need to optimize it in a different way. We need to optimize it for user experience. Disrupt the pattern. So the neuroscientist Carmen Simon talks about the brain as a prediction engine. And so the more that the brain can predict what's going to happen next, the less engaged the person becomes. In other words, they tune out. They start wandering. The brain starts wandering, right? And so anytime that we recognize a pattern as a human being, we start to zone out. We feel safer, right? It's the old brain telling us that we're safe. And so what she's saying is disrupt the pattern, disrupt the pattern, disrupt the pattern if you want them to engage. Because if you don't, they're going to tune out. Their mind is going to start wandering. Gregory Burns, another neuroscientist down at Emory University. So he ran studies that found that we are hardwired to love surprises. As human beings, we love surprises. So again, further and further is evidence to get them engaged, to get them loving your content, to get them sharing your content, to get them linking to your content. What you want to do is surprise them. Don't make everything so repetitive. So yes, we did increase organic traffic by 7,236%, but how could we have gotten more traffic for them? I don't know what that is. Next one. A couple of areas that could have gotten them more, we encouraged a lot of byline articles, and in the beginning, they were okay with that. And then for some reason, they got cold feet. They didn't like it. They didn't like editors having control over their content. And so they said, okay, let's stop doing this. Okay, but byline articles, for example, is one fantastic, easy way for you to get very high quality backlinks. And so we would encourage you doing that as much as possible. Audience engagement, surveys is a good example there, right? Surveys, anything that you can do to get them engaged helps you increase some aspect of your SEO, whether it's backlinks, right? Or organic, passive backlinks, or engagement or brand love or whatever it is. And again, it all goes back to a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So in summary, what I would encourage you to do is follow this SEO framework, right? Everything that we went through, everything from branding to SERP analysis, to search intent, to passive link building, all of this. It's all important. I wish that I could tell you to skip a few steps, only cover one or two and you'll be fine. But actually, it's this whole framework. And so again, it's the difference between doubling traffic and tripling traffic and getting 7,000% growth is following the entire framework. So on an earlier slide about myself, one of the things that was listed that I had written a book called Rethink Lead Generation, came out earlier this year. There's an entire chapter on SEO and content. Some of the concepts here today are included, and then there are additional concepts as well to help you improve your organic results. And so what I'd encourage you to do is, actually, if you're interested in the book, I'd be happy to send it to you. Free of charge, I'll pay for the shipping. So if you are interested in the book, just let me know. Just come up afterwards, and I just need an address. That's all. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn and mention that you were here at State of Search, and we'll get a copy of the book to you. Also, just very quickly, Ann Hanley, if you don't know, she's an incredible marketer. Her new book is dropping today. It's called Everybody Writes. It's the second edition. If you want to get better at copywriting, I would recommend that you pick up her book. But again, if you'd like a free copy of my book, just hit me up. So that's it. That is how we were able to get 7,000% organic growth, and how you can do it as well. And I hope that you found it very actionable and very helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. We have time for a couple of questions. Anybody have any? Yes.
Yep. Well, maybe. I don't know. So you mentioned earlier that you spent a substantial amount of time with branding before you went into any of this. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on what kind of branding? Was it just kind of style guidelines, that sort of thing, or did you go beyond that? So visually, yes, it does need to meet a certain, professional level of branding, right? But it's more the brand strategy. It's more what we refer to as a brand stack. And so that's the core values and the positioning and the brand tonality and the differentiation, the messaging platform, all of that stuff has to be well-defined and architected, and it has to align with the target audience. In this case, it didn't align with the target audience. Again, they historically had targeted startups, and what they needed to do now was to target Fortune 500 companies. Very different messaging in that case, right? Very different packaging of your marketing. So is it like basically a content overall for most of the site before actually getting to the stuff that you outlined in the presentation?
Yeah, yes. So we led them through a site redesign. We wrote everything. We rewrote everything in the site. And so, yes, it includes pretty much everything in the site you have to revisit. I had mentioned the case studies as well. The case studies were wrong. That's just one simple example of just looking at one element on the site. And what we did was we engaged with their account teams and wrote 20 case studies that we felt would appeal to Fortune 500 companies. And so it's not easy. It's not simple. It's not something that happens overnight. But again, we took 5 months to take care of this problem. Yeah.
Pillar pages. Is this one? I don't think it is. Pillar pages. do you do as blog posts, or do you do it like as a service page, or something in between?
So it depends on the client. With certain clients, what we like to do is create a page. So not a blog post, but a page, right? A static page. And we put it in the Knowledge Hub and it's featured, right? You might link to it in the global footer, things like that. That is our preference for a pillar page. Can you do a blog post as a pillar page? Absolutely. Absolutely. And is it effective? Yes, absolutely. So it's really just preference, one or the other, but you could do either.
Consider doing it like as taking an actual service page and just making tons of content and links on the page itself, and then link out to constantly be linking out to the blogs, or is it still better just a dedicated builder?
It depends what's on Google page 1 and page 2, right? So in certain cases, yes, you can do that if that's what you're seeing on Google page 1 and page 2 is service pages, right? Or product pages. And that happens, right? And we have one client where almost everything is a product page or a service page. And so you really have to customize those to be exactly what you're saying. Those have to be much, much longer, much deeper, much richer, much more comprehensive, and much more educational, combined with being a product page or a service page. In other cases, you'll see in Google that you don't have to do that. And actually, it could just be a blog post.
All right. Anybody else? Yes.
Sorry, I already asked you. Do you have a question? No, sure. Go ahead. What have you done to improve the speed of the workflow of working with some of these companies? Because essentially you're turning them into a publishing house.
Yes.
And that can be very slow with things like compliance and so on. What kind of tips would you recommend to improve that?
Yeah, so I would say as much as possible, it should be outside of the company. The more that you involve company resources, the slower things get, especially, and we understand that with certain clients, compliance is a major component of the process, and that's not going to be outsourced. But everything else can be. You want to use technology as much as possible to expedite the process. Mention a couple of technologies that we use to speed things up, to speed up the data analysis. And then in terms of who is involved in the process, you want as few people as possible. The more reviews that you have, the more people that you have involved, it will slow down the process. Compliance, I don't have an answer for you. Every compliance department is slow, right? And so you just need to have a backlog. That's one thing that has been really helpful, is having a big backlog of content ready to go, because then you're just going all the time, even though compliance is just dragging their feet. Yeah, sorry, compliance.
So I understand this is a relatively new process for you guys and everything, but as far as applying it to some of your other clients, are you finding there's any kind of variables that you really kind of have to stop and turn a dime on? Like, for instance, first thing that comes to mind is like the passive link building. That's something that's probably not going to be as applicable from client to client. Are you finding that there's these different kind of variables? And if so, how are you guys accounting for those in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have certain clients where something like digital PR is something that we can really do, and the client allows us to do it. And that helps us with the passive link building, right? Whereas with other clients, like in medical technology, like much stricter, not going to let you do that. Everything has to go through compliance, like you were saying. It takes time. Everything needs to be planned out 6 months in advance. And so with something like that, then, if digital PR is not part of the possibilities, then okay, you plan other ways of gaining traction and improving your results. So yes, client to client, there are variables without a doubt. Yeah.
Anybody else? All right. Tom came all the way from Boston just to share this with you. Let's give him a big hand.
Thank you.